to this session of the Open Classroom. Just a few announcements. Glad to see a lot of old faces here, as well as I think a few new folks who are here for the first time. As you know, we will continue with the rest of the semester. I think next week we are looking at healthcare. And I also wanted to remind you about next semester starting January 12th. Is that a little better? Can you hear me back there? Good. They hear me. Thank you, John. And I wanted to remind you, and particularly for those who were here last week, that we're developing next semester's open classroom that will begin on January 12th, again on Wednesday nights, 6 to 8, and it will be on the whole topic of demography is destiny. And we'll be looking at how demography affects our cities, how it affects the state, how it affects the nation, how it affects countries. Looking at the aging of the population, looking at changes in racial and ethnic composition of the population, looking at all kinds of issues. I think I mentioned last week The Economist magazine had an article 2 weeks ago arguing that by 2025 India will surpass China in terms of prosperity, based on the one-child policy in China and the fact that there will be many young people. I was just outside, if you saw me, doing an interview with Chronicle on Channel 5, which will run next week, about affordable housing, and I said, this really isn't about housing, it's about demographics. It's about how do we keep young people in the state and try and attract other young people to come here, because without them, we're going to look very old, very gray, we're not going to have a lot of money, and we're not going to be able to pay our bills. Those are the kinds of things we're going to talk about all next semester. But tonight, I have the very special privilege of introducing two very, very close and dear friends who I've had a chance to work with for a number of years, and working with both of them very closely now, and both experts on economic development and how we promote it. Economic development has become the issue, particularly in an era where we have so much unemployment and such slow economic growth. We're in competition across the country to be able to attract business and create jobs. We're, of course, in competition across the world in order to be able to retain our jobs and to maintain our prosperity. This is all about economic development. And one of the major questions we've been asking all semester is, what is the role of the public sector and what is the role of the private sector in terms of being able to work together to solve our problems? Be it the question of public employees, or be it the question of healthcare. Here we're going to talk about economic development. I have been going around the state arguing that we need to turn every mayor into the CEO for economic development in their own community. I have talked with our governor about being the CEO for economic development in the Commonwealth, because all across the country, that is an issue that's important. There are other important issues as well, but getting economic development right so that we produce the jobs that people need and want, and be able to maintain the prosperity, as well as the tax base we need to pay for all the services that we would like to have, is all dependent on economic development. Get it right, solves a lot of problems. Get it wrong, you got a whole mess of problems. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Our two guests have been working on this and work on it every day. Susan Wyndham Bannister, who has a PhD, was appointed by the governor in 2008 to be the director and president and CEO of the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center Board. She'll tell you about it, but it's a $1 billion initiative by the governor over 10 years to attract life sciences and to nurture life sciences. She has spent a lifetime in public service, but she's also been managing vice president of the commercial strategy group for App Biopharma Solutions. She's been working in life sciences for decades and has done a tremendous amount of consulting in life sciences. And she's going to give us a little idea of how the Mass Life Sciences Center works, the kinds of things they're doing, but more broadly put it in the context of how life sciences contributes to economic development in the state. Chuck Grigsby has done all kinds of things. He has been with the Massachusetts Capital Resource Company. He works with the New England Foundation for the Arts. He's done work with the City of Boston. He's worked in the Neighborhood Health Plan, Historic Boston Incorporated. He's been on small business advisory committees, and he, most importantly and most recently, has been working very closely with the Secretary for Housing and Economic Development in the Commonwealth, Greg Bielecki, in developing what has become a path-breaking piece of legislation signed this summer to create a new economic development strategy for the state, to create a new Massachusetts Growth Capital Corporation that I hope he will tell you a little bit about. He and I've had an opportunity to work on that together. But I know of no two people who have spent more time or thought more deeply and more wisely about how the state and the private sector can work together to give us the economic development we need. We'll begin with Susan and go on to Chuck.